Haere mai. Welcome to the service of Midday prayer on May the 20th. Today is the eve of the Feast of the Ascension, which means that the Feast of the Ascension takes place tomorrow. It's the 6th Thursday, which is the 40th day after Easter. It's considered one of the chief feasts of the Christian year, right up there with Easter and Christmas. Maybe with it being a Thursday, it doesn't always get quite so much attention. It is the day the Paschal candle that we lit at Easter, and in theory has been burning since then, is extinguished. And the smoke rising from the candle, once extinguished, rises heavenward, in keeping with the imagery from the readings of the day. The two readings set for the Feast of the Ascension come one from the Gospel of Luke and one from the Acts of the Apostles, also thought to be a work of Luke. Luke's Gospel concludes with the account of Jesus' ascension. The Gospel has demonstrated Jesus' credibility, and the ascension sets the seal on it. Luke 24, the Gospel ends this way. Then he led them out as far as Bethany, and lifting up his hands he blessed them. While he was blessing them, he withdrew from them and was carried up into heaven. It represents in story form the fundamental belief that Jesus is Lord. What the infancy narratives proclaimed, what the voice which accepted his response to baptism acknowledged, what Moses and Elijah at the Transfiguration discussed in glory, and everything else in Luke has been moving towards this, and it is now completed. The whole of that life is now caught up in God's presence. Jesus blesses his community, and that blessing is brought into the present. Luke reiterates this in the Acts of the Apostles as the Acts of the Apostles opens. It's as if he's connecting the dots, providing a continuum from the small community who had gathered around Jesus. Looking back and looking forward, the account goes something like this. In my earlier account, Theophilus, I dealt with everything that Jesus had done and taught, from the beginning until the day he was taken up, after he had given instructions through the Holy Spirit to the apostles he had chosen. After the Passion, Jesus appeared alive to the apostles, confirmed through many convincing proofs over the course of 40 days, and spoke to them about the reign of God. On one occasion, Jesus told them not to leave Jerusalem. Wait, rather, for what God has promised, of which you have heard me speak, Jesus said. John baptized with water, but within a few days you will be baptized with the Holy Spirit. While meeting together, they asked, Has the time come, Rabbi? Are you going to restore sovereignty to Israel? Jesus replied, It's not for you to know times or dates that Abba God has decided. You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you. Then you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, throughout Judea and Samaria, and even to the ends of the earth. Having said this, Jesus was lifted up in a cloud before their eyes and taken from their sight. They were still gazing up into the heavens when two messengers dressed in white stood beside them. You Galileans, why are you standing here looking up at the skies? They asked. Jesus who has been taken from you, this same Jesus will return in the same way you watched him go into heaven. It is only Luke, of all the evangelists, who closes the story of Jesus with a definitive point of departure, marking the end of the resurrection appearances. But the ascension is no afterthought. The story is prefigured in the narrative of the Transfiguration. Luke's description we heard in Acts of the Mount of Olives as a Sabbath day journey from Jerusalem highlights the scene of the ascension as a distinct location, the only narrative setting dignified as a mountain in Acts. This is a story that moves not only outwards from Jerusalem, but also downwards from the mountain. The story of Acts starts in a place where Jesus is visible. Angels speak clearly, and the cloud between earth and heaven is momentarily thinned. From this point on, discerning and understanding God's purpose will become progressively harder. Ascension marks the end of one way of knowing and the beginning of a time of waiting for a new way to know. The awaiting of the Holy Spirit at Pentecost, the story tells, when the gathered community will be empowered to enact God in the world, to be witnesses in the world now. Like they did with Jesus, they will get to gather together, to eat and to drink together, to learn from one another, to share with each other, to be present together to the reality of life in this world, with its beauty and its delights for sure, yet also with its sickness, malaise and brokenness. To gather together, to discern another way to know and to understand and to be opened to divine presence, so that they might enact this way of being in the world. To be the difference the world makes, not to stand staring physically, mentally, perhaps spiritually heavenward, not just standing there expecting, perhaps speculating upon the hour of God's return, expecting and waiting for God to fix everything and sort the world out. Ascension marks an ending and a beginning, in keeping with our times. The ending of one way of living and understanding things, and a transition to a new way. We also await the spirit of wisdom to be known in our midst, a spirit of wisdom to guide our meaning-making, our decision-making, the way of our living, our actions and our acting. May we listen to discern a spirit of wisdom that leads us to enact priorities and systems of living that are good for all of the world. And so as we wait, let us pause, let us pray. What was is not coming back. What is waits to be defined. In that moment, a breath. The story takes root. Ascension life raised up shifts our gaze to possibility. Breathe into the void. Loneliness births solitude. Chaos bears community. What was is not. What is awaits breath. So to finish with a blessing. Under the silent stars a call sings. Under the dark horizon a light flares. Under the expectant air a soul breathes. In the ground of all that is, in the innermost life, may we find ourselves blessed.